This is a demonstration of a contracts management solution highlighting the concept of storing a document with its associated metadata, and that document triggering off a workflow or a business process associated with that type of document or contract, and also the records management keeping of that contract for the duration of that contract lifetime. And then finally we'll be looking at the reporting and the monitoring of the contract management solution as it progresses through its life cycle. So to begin with, we'll first start with a salesperson who would typically go and create this customer contract and store any metadata associated with their contract. So to begin with, the salesperson would essentially open up Word, store the metadata, or at least create the contract, and then store that document to a document center. So let's demonstrate that first. So I'll be working with a couple of users in this demonstration to begin with. So I'll be jumping between a couple of windows, opening up as different users. So this is demonstrating the different role players within this process or business process, so that you can actually see who has rights and views to different information at different points of the process. So firstly, we'll start with Holly, who is the author, and I've already logged in as Holly. So if we open up Holly's desktop, Holly's essentially logged on to her company portal, which is in SharePoint, and Holly has this landing page where she can kick off multiple business processes, one of them being a new customer contract. So we'll actually click on new customer contract, and this will take Holly to the contracts management site. And what you can immediately see is some reporting, for example, the amount or the total amount of all contracts currently for the company. This could actually be a little goal report where we can see how far we are in terms of our goals for the year. We can also see here the last 3 contracts created for this customer, or should I say for the last 3 contracts created. So what Holly will do is she'll click on customer contracts on the left hand side, and she'll see all the contracts here, and in our case we want to create a new contract. So we'll click on documents and we'll click on new. So you can already see there's already a template for customer contract, and of course this could be extended to have other contracts like partner contracts, supplier contracts, vendor contracts, or any other types of documents. So we'll click on customer contract. So what you can immediately see is the document is open up inside Microsoft Word, and we can also see a little panel on the top here which highlights the metadata associated with this document. So as we start to complete the metadata of this document, we'll enter the customer name as HP and then the customer address as South Africa. You can immediately start seeing how the metadata is being updated associated with this document. So we can actually minimize that view so we don't need to view it. So again, to complete the rest of the metadata, we can enter the commencement date of this contract, and let's say we want to make it commencing on the 1st of September, and we also want to terminate it, let's say on the end of September. So it's only a 1-month contract, just to keep things simple. We also want to associate a contract amount, and we're going to make this contract amount $245,000. And there's a certain business rules that are applied to that contract amount. So as we progress through the contract, we can edit any clauses in the contract and make amendments. And then further down in the contract, we also want to capture who the customer contact is that's going to be notified or communicated with during the process. So the first thing is the contact number, and this could be typically a cell phone number so that we can actually send SMS notifications. So I'm going to enter just a fictitious number here, and then also an email address so that we can actually send any email communication to the customer contact. In this case, we're going to email Chad, who is our customer contact. So once we've done and updated all the metadata, we can actually now just save the document. And in this case, we're saving it directly to the document center. And as you can see, we start on the customer contract, so we'll just save this as HP and click on save. And it will ask us to also save the template. We're not, in this case, don't want to update the template, so we're just going to click on no. Right, so that document is now created, and you can actually see the document arriving in the actual document center. So what we've then demonstrated is the document currently stored in the document center. At this point, once the document is being created, there are a couple of things that are happening behind the scenes. So the first and simultaneously what is happening is, firstly, a business process or workflow is being triggered off, and this is typically the customer contracts management workflow, which would then take that contract through the relevant steps of a business process, through different approvals, and finally to completion. At the same time, we also have records management taking part, and this is being done by HP Trim, who is automatically managing the contract through the life cycle or through the business process. So at any time, any changes made to the document is being recorded in HP Trim as a record, and also the security associated with that record is being stored and managed inside Trim. So let's have a look at what's being done there. So if we again go in as Holly, we can see the HP Trim document here, and immediately you'll see the contract reference is to be auto-generated, and this is done automatically by the business process. So if we just click on refresh, we'll actually see that the contract reference has now been auto-generated, and this could be some document reference number or format that is applicable to the business, or it could be an ISO standard, whichever is applicable. So in this case, we just prefixed the contract reference with CUST for customer contract, as well as the year, the month, and some sequential number. We can also see the associated metadata that was captured on the contract, including the contract amount, and then we've also got a workflow status. This is a real-time view of the workflow, and which tracks exactly where the process is and where the contract is, and we can actually see where it is in the process, so that we can actually track how long it's taking and whether it's been sitting in a certain step for too long. So let's go through a couple of these steps. One of the first things is we're updating the document reference number, which I talked about. We're also setting the reference number of this workflow, and then we're also notifying the customer. In this case, we've actually SMS'd the customer as well as emailed the customer, so that you can see the sub-process that was called from the main contract management process to actually send an SMS. So if we actually now go and view that information, and I open up the email message that was sent out, we can actually see exactly what that SMS message was, so that we can, this would typically arrive on the customer contact's mobile phone. So there's the new number coming along. We can see in the subject line was the actual number that we sent the SMS to, and in this case it just says, "Dear HP, the customer name, we are in the process of finalizing your contract, your reference is such and such," and it's just coming from the Denalix legal team. So again, this could be sent to the mobile phone. Alright, so back onto the actual process view. We've now done the SMS, so if we drill down back into the main process, the next step was actually to assign the work to a salesperson or sales manager to actually approve the new customer contract. So in this case, what we actually did was, firstly, we took the customer, or should I say the contract amount, which in this case was $245,000, and there's a business rule associated with that amount that says, based on the amount, there are certain thresholds, and based on that threshold, only certain sales managers should approve. So if we look at this list of sales managers, we actually have Carl, who can approve any contracts under 500,000, Neil, who can approve anything under $1 million, and James, that can approve anything under 10 million. So in this case, because the contract is 245,000, it would actually be assigned to Carl firstly. So if we go again and view that view flow, when we look at the participants, we can actually see that it was assigned to Carl correctly. We can also, as part of the view flow, track which step is taking the longest in terms of duration for this particular contract. So we can see we're currently sitting with approved new customer contract there, or if we can actually view it in a different view so that we can compare different steps as well. So we'll leave this view open so that we can actually track how the contract progresses. Right, so as we move through the steps, we're actually going to log in as Carl. So again, I'll go to my shortcuts, and I've got a shortcut for Carl. And firstly, Carl could also receive the task notification via Outlook. So if Carl opens up his Outlook, we can actually see the task notification coming through. If we click on this contract notification or task notification, we can then see this is a new customer contract for review. What is the contract reference number, the customer name, a link directly to the contract document, and then also a link to the task so that Carl can actually go and complete his work. At the same time, the business process also has an escalation rule assigned that if Carl takes too long, we actually want to remind Carl about the work that he needs to attend to. So in this case, we've also got an escalation email, and it happened quite quickly for demonstration purposes, but typically you can set this to a couple of hours later or a couple of days later. So in this case, the escalation email saying that new customer contract requires immediate review, and also highlighting who the customer is, and again reminding Carl to attend to the task. So we'll just close Outlook. The next view that Carl can access his work is through the SharePoint portal. So we'll actually open up Carl's portal view. And what Carl can actually view here is a My Task Queue or My Work List view of all the work that Carl is assigned. And this can be for any process built within the business across SharePoint and across other systems. If there is work assigned to Carl, Carl can access it in one single location. So this is essentially a global work list for Carl. So Carl can see all customer contracts management tasks assigned to him. You can see there's the HP task, and Carl can do a couple of things here. You can redirect this task to another user. So we'll actually redirect this to Neil. So this could be Carl has discussed this customer with Neil and understands that Neil is aware of this customer and would like to manage the contract. So Carl will take that contract for HP and reassign it to Neil, and Carl can now continue with his other work. So we'll just close his browser. The next user, as we've reassigned it to Neil, we can actually go in as Neil, and Neil will, in this case, again open up his portal. So Neil received the new task for HP, and what's important to notice here is that Carl, or should I say Neil, is actually out of office. So as Carl assigned the work to Neil, Carl wasn't aware that Neil was out of office and therefore could not attend to this task immediately. So what Neil has actually gone and done is configured his out of office rules to say, if I receive any work, please assign my work to my delegated user. So in this case, Neil has assigned Anthony to receive all tasks that Neil receives, and that's regardless of whatever process. However, Neil would also like to filter out any customer contract approval tasks, and those should not be assigned to Anthony. So if we actually open up the customer contract approval task, or should I say rule, Neil has configured that any task that Neil receives to approve new customer contracts must be assigned to James and not to Anthony. So again, we'll close Neil's browser and we'll now log in as James, who is the delegated user from Neil for any customer contract approval tasks. And there you can see the task received in James's work list. Remembering also that throughout this workflow, there were two things that were happening. Is that the contract was also being managed at trim at all times. So if we also open up trim, we can also go and search for that contract that was stored inside trim. So we'll go and browse the classifications, we'll go to our legal contracts, customer contracts, and we'll find our HP trim contract there. And you can see the customer reference number or contract reference number as well as the customer, and we even have a view to the contract inside trim. So there's the contract that was created, and this again is a record stored within trim for the lifetime of this specific contract. Right, so let's continue with the business process. So we log in as James, and James finally received that task, which is a delegation from Neil. Remembering also that the process is still waiting for approval of this new customer contract. So James will now click on his task, open up the task page, and he'll see some information related to the task, when it was assigned to him, a link directly to the document that he needs to approve. So you can again open up this document immediately. He then needs to also assign on behalf of which user is he completing this task on. So in this case it was Neil that delegated the work to James. And James has a choice of 3 decisions that he can make. He can either approve, decline, or send for rework. Now, based on the decision that he makes, it would affect the flow of the process. So if he approves, it would go down this path. If he declines, it goes down here to delete the contract. And if he sends for rework, it goes back to the author of the contract. So in our case, we're just going to approve the contract. James can also see the instruction that he needs to review this customer contract, all the metadata associated with the contract, and one thing that he does need to capture is the customer account manager. Now this user essentially will be used throughout any further communication related to this contract once the contract is approved and the customer is on board. And again, James can enter some information that says this customer is important to us, and we can click on submit. So James has now completed the work. He can close his browser, and he can also refresh his work list, and you'll see that the work is actually now complete. And James can close his browser. If we now view the workflow, we can actually now see that the task to approve the contract has now been completed, therefore it's turned to green. The red paths meaning that it hasn't actually followed that path, because in this case James actually approved the contract, so it followed the green path of approve. We then did another validation check to say if the customer contract is over 100,000, we also need a second level approval. In this case, it's the Chief Financial Officer. In our situation, the Chief Financial Officer is actually assigned to Brandon. So Brandon can open up his Outlook, and the Chief Financial Officer typically likes to work inside Outlook. So Brandon receives his email for this new customer HP. He can see all the information, and he wants to simply click on the task to approve or decline this contract. And as you can see, when we click on the link, it actually takes us directly to the task page to approve this task. Again, we can see the information related to the task, the link to the document, and again, Brandon has a decision to make, either approve, decline, or send it back for more information. And if again we view the process, we'll actually see that if Brandon approves, it would actually go and continue with the process. If he sends it back for more information, it would go back to the sales manager, and if he declines, it would go and delete the contract. In our case, we're actually going to approve this contract. We're going to review all the metadata and the information related to this. We can also view any previous comments that were captured. We can see there's the comment that was captured by James at that step of the process. And Brandon can make a decision to say, I'm happy with this contract, and click on submit. Right, then his task is now complete, and he can now delete his email or archive his email for later purposes. So if we now view the view flow, we can actually see that Brandon has approved it, therefore it is following the green path and not the red paths. And what we're now doing, we're actually converting the contract to a PDF for sending to the customer and also for archiving purposes. Again, throughout the whole workflow, we could actually see which tasks were taking the longest and which steps are, need maybe some work or need some attention. So let's go and have a look at that contract that was sent out to the customer. We look at Chad. So remembering Chad, we configure on the contract as our customer contact, and we specified his email address. And there's the new contract that's arrived for HP, and we can see that this contract is now effective from 1st of September. The information related to the contract is inside the email, and Chad, as the customer contact, has access to the contract. So if we open up this email, we can actually click on the contract and have a preview of that contract. Right, so here's the contract that's been loaded, and we can see all the metadata that was captured in the initial step of this business process. Remembering also that throughout the whole life cycle of this contract, it was constantly managed by Trim, and therefore any changes to the contract and the metadata were being stored and archived in Trim as a record. So we're now complete with the process, and now we'd like to actually view some reporting. So I'll just log off Holly, and we'll now go in as an administrator or a manager. So in this case, a manager can come into the portal, go to the contracts management website, and actually view some reporting. So again, as I mentioned in the beginning, we have a counter here that counts the total amount of all contracts currently being managed by the company. We also have a report dashboard where we can view some more reports related to the contracts management solution. So the first view is firstly the last 3 contracts that were captured by the sales people, and we can see there's the HP contract with its reference number, and we still have a view to the workflow that was associated with that contract. If we scroll down, we can also view any customer contracts that are due to expire. So in this case, you can use this report to actually identify which customer contracts are up for renewal. So if we look at the September time frame, which is the contract that we created today, and we drill down into that contract or into that month, we can actually see all the contracts up for renewal within September, as well as the contract amounts, and we have a link to the contract. So if we needed to view any terms and conditions of the contract, we can have immediate access to that contract. On the right hand side, we can also view a monthly performance report where we can track how quick or how slow we are attending to our customer contracts. So this could be a competitive edge for companies to improve their business processes. So we can see in July we averaged 4 hours or 4 days, should I say, to attend to our customer contracts. And this could also highlight peak months or off-peak months, and therefore when you need additional staff, or perhaps even identifying bottlenecks within the process. If we scroll down, again on the right hand side, we can see activity performance. So this is a drill down into the different steps of the process and see which step is taking the longest. So in this case, it's the approve new customer contract step. Also, if we mouse over, we can see what's the average duration, as well as the total amount of instances or contracts that are currently being monitored at that step. On the left hand side, we have an expected versus actual duration. So this is more of an SLA type report where you can then track what is the expected duration for a particular step of the process versus the actual duration, which is the total time taken to complete that step within the business process. So again, we can see these steps are taking a little bit longer than expected. Again, if we wanted to drill down and see why this is taking so long and who's responsible, we can drill down on one of these steps and also view the information related to who's responsible, how long they are taking relating to their related to the expected duration, and therefore I can either attend to it as a training exercise, therefore my staff need additional training in order to make the process a bit more efficient, or it could be that we need additional staff. The other report that we also have is the process management dashboard. So this is a dashboard where a process owner or an administrator has access to manage the business processes in one single view. So firstly, we can view all the processes that are being managed on this portal site. We can actually view when it was last changed and by who, as well as how many versions we're currently sitting on for a particular business process. We also have a management work list where we can track any tasks assigned to any user within the organization against the business processes that we're managing. So in this case, here's an example of a task that's assigned to Carl. That's currently sitting at the approved new customer contract step, and we can view the reference number, and we can even redirect the step on behalf of Carl. So let's say as an example, Carl was not in the office and this contract needed to be approved or at least moved to the next step quite urgently. We can then redirect it to somebody in a position to approve this new customer contract. We can also view some audit reports. So on the left hand side, if we click on process instances, we can then select the particular business process we want to view the audit reports on. And we can see all the contracts that have been submitted through the business process. Again, here's our HP contract that was kicked off and completed. So it was initiated by Holly. We can see how long duration that it took to complete, as well as when it was finished. And we can also drill down into that process and see each of the steps that took place within that process. So again, we can see the duration of those steps. We can see that we notified the customer, went for approval, it went, it did the business rule check of over 100,000, it did, and therefore it went for approved contract over 100,000. We can also drill down into approve new customer contract and actually view who was responsible for that step and making that decision. So as you can see, originally it was assigned to Carl, who then redirected it to Neil, and Neil was out of office, who then delegated the work to James, and finally James actually completed the work. We can record when it was actually done, and also the final action or decision that was made to approve that contract. So this is very important information to have as part of your business process solution in order to track customer contracts or invoices for accounts payable, etc., etc. What we can also derive from these reports are any bottlenecks that are in our process. So typically, if you've now viewed these reports and you've identified some bottlenecks, you typically want to be able to make some changes to the business process. And this should not be a lengthy process. It should be quite an easy exercise, and also should be very minimal cost and effect to the business. So let's go and have a look at how we can actually change the contracts management solution. So what has been done is we've reviewed a couple of bottlenecks within the contracts management solution, and we've identified that the sales managers have reported that all the customer contracts that they receive have got a lot of editing errors, so that being spelling or grammar, and this is taking them a long time to attend to their work, as well as approving the contracts, which is then making the process very inefficient. So what the business has decided to do is insert or add an editing step within the business process in order to make sure that those contracts have been edited and corrected, and therefore the sales managers can simply approve or decline that contract. So let's go and make a change to the business process. So we go to the customer contracts library of contracts and documents. We go to the settings and we click on the K2 process icon. This would open up the process designer within the browser. We want to edit an existing process, and we can see the customer contracts management process already deployed. We can also open up the history and view any previous versions of the process, access it, and make changes in deploy. In this case, we want to access the last deployed version. We click OK. And there's our business process that we just executed or ran through. So again, what the business said is we want to insert an editing step before the sales manager approval step. So that would actually have to occur around here. So we'll simply just click on the insert new step, and there's our empty block. We want to now use one of our actions on the top toolbar, and this typically is assigning a task for editing. So we'll drag that onto the process and say this is the editing step, and we'll give the instruction as please correct the contract for any spelling or grammar errors. And the editor has a decision to either just approve the contract as is or send to the author for editing. If we click next, we want to now assign or configure the outcomes of each decision. So with the approved decision, we actually want to continue with the approval process that we demonstrated earlier on. And with the send to author, we actually want a new step of the process. And we can remove this unknown path. We click on finish. And then you can see that if he approves, it would continue with the process that we just demonstrated. And if he clicks on send to author, it will create a new step. So again, with the send to author, we want to assign a task to the author. And in this case, it is correct contract is the task. And the instruction is please review editor's comments. And his decision is sent back to editor. If we click next, again we'll define the outcome to say if he made that decision, please send it for editing. And we click on finish. And there very quickly you can see how we added a new editing step and we sent it back to the author for correction before continuing with the rest of the approval process. So this is now ready for deployment. We can simply go to the file menu and click on deploy, and that will deploy the process. So that's as easy as it is for the business to actually make amendments to their business process using the K2 tooling. That is now completes our contracts management solution process, and remembering that this is also a platform that you can use to build other business processes for other types of contracts or documents. For example, an invoice which then needs to be stored into HP Trim as a record, but also kick off a accounts payable process.